to his therapist, and he said, you know, I'm suffering because I can't get over the negative aspects of my mother when she was alive. And I'm full of anger and hatred, and I need to release that because I'm not enjoying life. And the therapist mentioned this. There's a tremendous Sanskrit metaphor that came through, that yesterday is nothing but a dream, tomorrow is nothing but a vision, but today well lived makes every yesterday a dream of happiness, and every tomorrow a vision of hope. Let's clap for that. That's a Sanskrit metaphor. So, what the therapist said to this guy was this. He said, Angel, George, Angel's gone through that as well. George, let's do this. He read the Sanskrit, and he read the statement. He said, let's do this. Let's make today a day of happiness so that yesterday will also be a dream of happiness. And we'll do this by having you do this. Your mother, you know, you haven't gotten over something, and your mother's been long gone for over 20 years, and you're still suffering. So why don't you do this? Let's go ahead, and he handed him a sheet of paper and a pencil. He said, let's go ahead and write down something that your mother had taught you. And beside that, let's put some kind of a quote from your mom. And let's see if we can make today a well-lived day. He said, oh, I can do that. That's no problem. And he thought him on, and he says, well, my mother taught me appreciation. That's a good start. Your mother taught you appreciation. She says, yes. If you're going to kill yourself, go outside and do it because I cleaned the house. And the therapist said, well, that's a good thing. That's a start. You have another one that you can think about. Yes, my mother taught me religion. Oh my gosh, that's really good. And he wrote down religion. You better pray that the mess you made on the carpet will come out. You're kidding her. And he's starting to lighten up a bit. Oh my gosh, I'm releasing my anger. It's feeling pretty good. My mother taught me about time travel. Oh, that's wonderful, time travel. Wow. That's good. So he writes it down. If you don't straighten up, I'm going to knock you into the middle of next week. And already he's starting to feel so much better. You know, this therapy he's going through is really working, and for 20 years he's suffered with this, and all of a sudden he's feeling good. He's releasing his anger. Can we continue on? George tells the therapist, of course, let's carry on. My mother taught me logic. Really? And he wrote down, because I said so, that's why. Then he said, wait, talking about logic, my mother taught me more logic. If you fall out of that swing and break your neck, you're not going to go to the store with me. And then he went on, and you want a couple more? Yeah. Is that okay? Sure. My mother taught me foresight. Make sure you, and I've had that happen to me. My mother taught me foresight. Make sure you wear clean underwear in case you're in an accident. I don't want to be embarrassed at the hospital. How many of you have heard that? My mother taught me irony. Keep crying and I'll give you something to cry about. My mother taught me hypocrisy. If I didn't tell you once, I've told you a million times. Stop exaggerating. Are we doing okay? My mother taught me the circle of life. I brought you into this world and I can take you out. And lastly, my mother taught me behavior modification. Stop acting like your father. It may sound silly, and I bring this up for one purpose. And it goes back to what Lynn and I talked about this morning. That, you know, everything that's happened to us in the past, everything, is really a gift. It's a greater good. And technically, there's really nothing to forgive because what? Because it's brought goodness into our life. We can look back and say, gosh, some of the turmoil I've gone through, my God, I didn't think at the time. I was running 2 school districts and starting a church in Emerson Institute at the same time. I don't know how I did that. And thank God for this belief system. It carried me through some really tough times. And that's the way all of us says. We can look back and we look at all of those things that seem so detrimental in the moment. And all of a sudden we look back and say, that was a blessing in my life. What forgiveness does, though, it allows us to release all that stuff, to start living in this present moment. But what it does for Angela, I think more than anything else, it detoxes my mental atmosphere. Isn't that interesting? It cleans things up a bit. And each of us, and I mentioned it early on in the talk, each of us have this life force that flows into our life. And so by cleaning it up, we allow that life force to flow freely into our lives. And the mystics tell us, and they say that there's more than just our physical bodies. This life force, there are several subtle life forces that enhance our physical being. And we can think out of the box. Some of you may believe this, some of you may not. That's okay. But there are other forms. The mystics call it etheric, the etheric body. How many of you heard that, the etheric body? We have the mental body, we have all the emotional body, the causal body. We hear all that stuff. But we do know that we're pretty self-contained. And we as physical beings, we have a notion of energy that surrounds us that really harmonizes with our own vibrations. And it's our connection and our communication to all that there is to this life form. And our duty assignment, I think, this month is to realize that we don't want to clog that up. We don't want to stop that energy from flowing into our life because it cuts us off from our experience with the communication with the divine, with the life force of all there is. We are that life force, but let's keep it open. And so that's what this month's all about. Tippin tells us that when we do that, it is like cleaning the filters out of a fireplace. It's just like that. I look at it this way, that our life experience is pretty much like an airplane. It's the aerodynamics of an airplane. Being a pilot, I like to relate to that once in a while. The plane is either going forward or it's dropping out of the sky. And I think most of you are pilots will realize that. I have never been, as a pilot, flying my 172 Cessna, I've never been able to look in the rearview mirror and put the plane in reverse and go backwards. It's not possible. And so the bottom line is on that is that when we are in what we call unforgiveness, we are trying to fly the airplane in reverse